Today, folks, I wanted to provide you with some updates on Aduro Clean Technologies, my favorite Canadian small cap stock that has recently dropped by 30% on the back of this tariff war crash. And it's actually trading back toward its uplisting price when it uplisted on the NASDAQ under ADUR, currently around 175 million CAD in its market cap. But if we zoom out on the Canadian ticker, ACT, we can actually see it's been one of the most resilient Canadian small caps because, man, it has done quite well since this thing started trading from $2 to where we currently sit at $6 on the Canadian value. I would still rather own it in the US price. I like owning it listed on the NASDAQ in US dollars, but that's just my personal preferences. But incomparable to the Russell, I mean, even the Russell went through quite a correctional period. This represents a lot of the small caps in the United States, and it dropped by almost 30% from top to bottom. Small caps just always get affected quite a bit more in these crashes. They're a little bit more volatile, but again, you know, higher volatility also equals higher return when these stocks do start to perpetuate to the upside. And we got to ask, where is that upside for Aduro? Where are we going in the future? If you're new to the space, Aduro, as we all know, is basically able to take plastics and polymers and turn them into the fuels for the 21st century here, basically reconverting them back to oils. And they've got quite a few engagements going on in their pipeline, 10 engagements with companies that are all worth 40 billion plus in their market cap value. This is a technology that can completely revolutionize one of the most toxic parts of our society. Even if you don't believe in global warming, if you don't believe in all this ESG stuff, you have to recognize plastic is polluting the world. Like, it's in the oceans, it's everywhere. People know it's a problem, but for the first time ever, we now have the technology to actually reconvert it and turn it into a renewable fuel, a renewable resource, which is quite fascinating because this technology hasn't really existed at the scale it's existed for up to the last couple years, which is truly a marvel and a half. And I'm glad that we can be a part of this story and try and support it because Aduro is an outlier against all the other technologies. They can take more plastics, more dirtier plastics, a variety of different polymers, and actually convert them, whereas most companies can only do one or two, which will be much more beneficial to the space in its entirety. Now, we are in a bit of a dry period where we just haven't got a lot of news, and that is not a bad thing. In fact, the fact we haven't got any news means a lot of these client engagements are still going on. They're still working on the technology, and I'm sure by the end of the year, we're going to get some updates. And if we can convert just one of these into a full client and not just an engagement customer, I mean, we could really start seeing some momentum in the stock as the technology finally gets proven out. This is the risky, what I'm going to call the risk reward phase. A lot of people might want to wait on the sideline until they prove the technology out, but I have a good sense that the technology is already proven out. Some of my personal friends, like the independent investor, actually went and visited the facilities. I don't think this is vaporware. We're far past that. So now we're into this phase of just letting these customers figure out how it can work into their current operations. And man, we'll be off to the races, I think, in the next 1 to 2 years max. But if we take a look at earnings, this is a company that doesn't have really any revenue. The revenue that we see, the quarterly revenue here of $63,000, that is just what they're getting paid for the engagements for them to test the technology out. This is immaterial and to me is completely meaningless, but basically they're still operating at a loss. We can see for the quarter here of about 2.8 million, and they currently have about 8.4 million in cash. They've got about enough cash of a runway to get them through the rest of this year. And in this year, I would like to see some converting of some of these clients. But on top of that, they do obviously have one of their pilot plants here that they're looking to build out, the HCT demonstration plant that they basically are working with a next-gen polymer, which signed a memorandum of understanding. And we've talked about this in the past because this was the last big news they announced. But basically, Aduro is currently constructing its next-generation process HCT pilot plant targeted for commissioning in Q3 of 2025. The pilot plant will serve as a key scale-up step, generating critical data to support the transition to larger demonstration plants. With the anticipation of successful commissioning and testing of the pilot plant, Aduro plans to advance toward a demonstration scale facility initially designed to process 8,000 tons per year. And basically this MOU comprises of 3 stage-gated phases with the feedstock brokerage services, a site selection, evaluation, and preparation, a site permitting, zoning, and building approvals, and then a preliminary engineering and business model development. So basically we're waiting for Q3 for them to actually build this plant out. This will provide a lot of data as well, but we've already got quite a lot amount of data. If you go into their investor presentation, I highly recommend you do. You can get kind of a really good understanding of what they're currently getting from global waste management and the recovery they're capable of with this recycling, which I think is really neat. They've recently updated this, and I really think it gives some good highlights on exactly what's going on with this company as it sits today, as we wait for the revenue opportunities to come into play, which, like I said, in 2024, 2025, 2026, this is the real pivotal moment for this company. So we'll see if being an early investor pays off by leaps and bounds. I think this should be trading at a $1 billion valuation, closer to its comparable competitors that are a little farther ahead processing already with companies like Procter & Gamble. But I still think Aduro, eventually with the technology it have, will be one of the primary leaders in this space. But these are, of course, our opinions of my own. This does not constitute financial advice. Aduro has been a sponsor of my channel. Obviously, all the disclaimers are in the description below, but I'd love to know what you think in that comment section. And as always, I look forward to catching you in the next one.